Hello and welcome to my channel. I hope you enjoy the story. This was written by a real human. So please leave a like if you enjoy it to help the channel and subscribe for future content. It's free. Links to the story and Patreon will be in the description. Please go and support the author. Any support is always appreciated. If a human narrator would like to narrate my stories, please contact me. I write these in my spare time between work and my children and just don't have the time or quiet space to narrate them myself. I hope you can understand. Thanks for your time, and again I hope you enjoy the story. And for the love of everything YouTube, this is literature, so please leave my channel alone. Let's get into it, folks. Cats at the Cradle Part 9, 3 minutes until impact, Captain, said his senior TAC officer, sweat dotting her brow as she continuously updated the targeting subroutines controlling the first salvo of the 3 ships' combined surprise attack. They had managed to make it into the Farsi system by approaching behind a comet that had been traveling above the system's elliptical. They had patiently trailed it until it passed one of the moons orbiting the second habitable planet of the Farsi system. That's when Neptune's TAC officer noticed that the Viril and Sagoth brood fleet that was stationed around Farsi was leaving slowly through the FTL gate. As they did so, Admiral Zhang ordered his task force to hide in the sensor shadow cast by the moon. That's when they discovered a secure Orion signal that they had promptly set comms to cracking. It was very weak, but they had the Orion cipher. The computer just wasn't able to decipher it without a sentient being helping, and that was taking some time. Unfortunately. 1 minute, she said, and he didn't wait for the rest before barking orders himself. Activate those darts. As soon as they are gone, get another batch programmed. Let's see how effective some of our toys are. Relay orders to the Neptune and the New York. Has comms worked out that signal yet? Captain Gregory asked, and got a no from comms. 10 seconds. His TAC officer warned. The 3 Viril battleships and 4 frigates that had been left as a picket near the only remaining FTL gate suddenly flared to life as their shields began spooling up. 2 of the frigates disappeared in a flash as their hulls by themselves couldn't hope to withstand the dozens of the newest Cerberus ship-to-ship missiles that slammed into them, traveling at half of the speed of light. Silent and unseen. A Viril battleship violently spun as one of its 2 main fuel cells was hit, and a third of its aft section disappeared in a bluish ball of plasma. The other 2 battleships and 2 frigates took some damage from the first volley, but it was the second wave that caused the most damage. One of the battleships managed to turn into the next volley, its captain smart enough to realize that more would probably be coming, Gregory thought. But still not enough, as the next 7 missiles slammed into its bow and tore 12 to 20 meter holes several bulkheads deep into it. The other managed to get its shields spooled up enough to take the brunt of the missiles targeting it, but flickered as the generators failed or were overloaded. Surprisingly, the other 2 frigates managed to make it through the second volley unscathed, their shields flickering on. Activate the darts. I want those ships crippled or dead, barked Gregory, his eyes straying to the Admiral. He just nodded and went back to studying the TAC map. His hands clasped behind his back. Darts active, his TAC officer announced. New York is reporting another ship just exited Atmo at Farsi, yelled his comms officer. 9 more targets going hot. Looks like they already repurposed the Orion's defensive satellites from around the system and towed them to the remaining FTL gate. Sir Neptune is hitting them with jamming. The first wave of darts struck. The first stage used a miniature blink drive that, once programmed to the right coordinates, could materialize the second stage into the target ship, bypassing any shields no matter how strong. The problem was they could only blink smaller warheads. To try to offset this, R&D had dug out some old cluster nukes that humanity had millions of already. And just so happened the Phoenix could carry hundreds of them in her bays and didn't even have to lose any of their fighter capacity to take the extra missiles on. They fit in racks of 9, and the racks fit safely in between the fighters. The second battleship went dark, a large hole suddenly appearing near the stern, venting atmosphere and bodies. The third battleship shuddered. In just a moment Gregory could see life pods ejecting from it. The 2 frigates sped towards the FTL gate, and Gregory could see it beginning to light up as it started to open. Out of literally nowhere, the fighter wings Hussars and Blood Ravens descended upon the frigates like swarms of piranhas with blood in the water. They had waited to engage their engine, opting to be launched at the same time as the missiles. Each pilot took an extra tank of air, so after the initial burn to slingshot around the moon, they had been running completely silent until the second wave of missiles hit. The frigates managed to shoot a few of them. But the 50 fighters made quick work of them, and soon his computer marked more life pods ejecting right before 2 bright flashes of light temporarily blinded the view screen. He grimaced as he watched 3 more icons on the TAC screen blink out. 4 of the icons were red indicating no life signs from the pilot's nanite link. 3 were purple indicating life signs present and tracking either the wreck or the cockpit life pod. New target identified as Viril, but that thing isn't in the database, sir. His TAC officer reported. Tonnage puts it as a dreadnought class, reading energy weapons firing. The Phoenix shuddered as she took a hit to her starboard shield battery. Sparks flew from consoles near the door as alarms began to wail. Shields at 67%. Starboard cell holding. Announced engineering. Get coordinates on that ship. He heard himself ordering, his voice calm. Launch the other 2 wings, they're not doing us any good on deck. He could hear his TAC officer relaying the order to the flight boss. They're firing again, she said, and he barely had time to grab the console in front of him before the Phoenix shuddered. Someone screamed as they suffered an electrical burn as their console overloaded from the blast. Reports flashed from the starboard side as multiple instances of damage flooded in. Breaches on D6, D7, and E3 medical. She paused for a second, gathering data as fast as she could. Starboard shield battery is dead. Engineering is reporting complete node failure, Captain. Shields at 40%. Coordinates programmed, sir. His XO said. The Spades and Vanguard report 70% launched and climbing. Requesting weapons hot, sir. Send him some love, XO. And tell them as soon as they can form up they're clear to engage with the enemy. He looked at the TAC screen and said. Helm, roll us so our port shield battery has a chance of taking some of the next hit. No sooner did he get the roll of that sentence out and he could feel the inertial dampeners straining as his helmsman complied. Weapons fire incoming. Brace. His TAC officer yelled. The Phoenix only got clipped as his TAC screen suddenly showed the New York blinked, virtually right in front of the dreadnought, imposing its shields to the brunt of the dreadnought energy weapons. As it did so, she fired a full salvo of missiles she had ready. The energy beams took some of them out, but as the New York's smaller shield batteries melted to slag under their power, her Cerberus missiles slammed into its shields in a flash of energy, harmlessly wasted. But then the dart struck and Captain Gregory could see the shields on the dreadnought fail, and it seemed to slow considerably. The dreadnought weapons began to power up again though. Captain Gregory was sure that the New York wouldn't survive another hit, and even though he wasn't religious, he silently prayed for the men and women on it to get to the life pods. And then 100 more Cerberus missiles tore into the hull of the behemoth, and it visibly staggered as the Spades and Vanguard fighter wings arrived. Right as the New York loosed another volley. At that range, and after the missiles from the fighters had opened small gaping wounds that were venting atmosphere pretty quickly, when her volley hit, it was like gutting a fish. Roughly 2/3 of the stern of the ship suddenly imploded and life pods were jettisoned, though not many. A cheer went up around the bridge that was quickly quieted back to its normal professionalism. Gather our wings. Send over boarding parties, have the Neptune park right over that gate. Anything comes through, and I mean anything, fucking destroy it with prejudice. Have her send a drone through with a data burst as soon as we've downloaded everything we can. Ordered Admiral Zong. Good work, everyone. That could have gone either way. Looks like fortune favored us this time. Sir, we are receiving a message from the enemy dreadnought. It's the comms officer looked at her screen again as if double-checking the information before continuing. Sorry sir, our software seems to be having trouble with some of their vocabulary, something that translates roughly as the prime matriarch of the newly formed colony of Rakisal. Another pause. She does not know who we are but knows when she has been defeated. Her ship Another pause and then, I can't even start to say that. That's simpler, the Reaver. She willingly awaits your blade if you'll spare her daughters. Captain Gregory looked at Admiral Zong and the Admiral replied. This might prove valuable. Order her to prepare her ship to be boarded, send in the Marines and secure those ships. Then let's get some engineers and techs over there. I want hostages for intel to interrogate and any data we can glean from those ship systems. Come on people. He barked, his gravely voice causing immediate actions. Within an hour all 4 wings were gathered back in and tugs sent to recovery life pods and tow the fighters back that could be salvaged. The Neptune sat parked over the FTL gate. The New York had managed to scrape together enough parts. She had 1 shield node active, barely managing 19% shield strength. It wasn't much, but she had shields. The Phoenix had gotten her secondary starboard generator activated shortly after she had rolled over, her redundancies paying dividends. And thanks to the New York taking the brunt of that last shot, the carrier was able to continue at full operational readiness. Its engineers working to get the New York servos and circuit boards to try and get their shield generators back running instead of operating off reactor power. And possibly get another shield node operational. Sir, comms just cracked that ciphered message. Should I put it through? Asked his TAC officer. As he nodded, she swiped the screen in front of her and the digital TAC display of the Farsi system faded away to be replaced by a tall, lithe-looking Orion with short black fur and almost glowing green eyes looked back at him. Whoever you are, please help us. I can see you're not Orions, you destroyed those bug vermin, and you seem to have our cipher. Her eyes searched the bridge around him but found no Orions present and continued. If you are allies of Farsi, then I, Regent Jacquelium of VAT, formally request your aid. She looked down and gestured to someone sharply before continuing. Can you track this message location? Gregory looked at his TAC officer and as she gave a silent thumbs up he answered, yes. To both. And he could see her shoulders slump visibly. Thank Halleck. She said, we can't get our engines to work and we have been out of water for a few days now, and food even longer. Her lithe appearance suddenly took on another meaning as his brain finally clicked with the sight of a malnourished Orion female. We'll get you, just stay calm. Where are they at TAC? He waited for a dot to pop up denoting their location. The trajectory their ship was on would take them slowly out of the system away from the system's elliptical. Get a tug out to them as soon as you can. Make it a priority. They had probably only survived because they looked like any number of different space debris left after a battle and the life support wasn't putting out enough power by itself for sensors to track. Sir, the Marines have the Prime Matriarch and her daughters in custody. They're reporting problems, sir, unintentional by the sounds of it. His XO reported. Before she could ask what kind of problems, he elaborated. Sir, Sergeant Gregory is reporting he's secured the VIPs, however he's requesting medical be ready as soon as they can get on board. The Prime Matriarch tried to commit something he called seppuku. Well sir, I don't know what that means, his XO said, but sounds like Sergeant Gregory didn't let whatever it was get completed. He's also requesting female Marines take over the VIPs as soon as they get on board. Do it. Have Sergeant Faith and Sergeant Wallace ready to take over babysitting, and I want 2 more names to add to that detail by the time they get over here, XO. He knew the 2 Marines he had named were part of the ODTs. Toughest in the task group, and was sure his XO could easily produce 2 more names with capable Marines attached and have them ready for Sergeant Gregory's team to arrive. Prep medical, send Dr. Lee everything we have on the viril anatomy. They had already achieved more than they had set out to do. The United Sol Alliance engineers and techs were scouring whatever they could find from the enemy ships and wrecks. Within an hour he was sitting with Admiral Zhang drinking a hot cup of coffee as his XO gave them an update in his office. 730 viril captives, only 16 broodlings, and those only because they were knocked unconscious or incapacitated during the initial combat, sir. He handed the small ornate dagger the Prime Matriarch had used on herself to Admiral Zhang and continued. That is a monomolecular blade and it can just about cut through anything we know. Even the newest, hardest, nano-tungsten cobalt alloys given enough time. If it wasn't for the new Medifoam Sergeant Gregory had immediately administered, she would be dead. And Dr. Lee reports still might. He paused, taking a deep breath, which brings us to her daughters. Both are completely inconsolable and manic at being separated. They will have to understand she's in medical. If they wish to help, the doctor may need them to donate blood. Gregory stopped as his XO began shaking his head. What is it then? They well you see sir, Sergeant Gregory unknowingly bonded with them. The farther away from those 2 he gets, the worse his head feels like it's splitting open. His XO grimaced. That's a hostile act, XO. Why haven't they been isolated and sedated? The Admiral asked. Sir, by the reports from the squad members present, both young women went so far as to plead for a female to surrender to, and when one couldn't be produced promptly, the Prime Matriarch said, Forgive me, my daughters, I fear I have doomed you to a life of slavery, and tried to cut herself in half. It was right after Sergeant Gregory had administered the Medifoam that he had roughly grabbed them and cuffed them, and disarmed them of similar weapons. That's when it happened, sir. His XO sounded like he had swallowed something and it was stuck. What happened, XO? Gregory asked, arching an eyebrow. His XO never beat around the bush. This must either be really, really bad or rather embarrassing for the man to explain. They bonded to Sergeant Gregory when he touched them. The reason viril teenagers are kept with their mothers and never allowed near drones of their species. It isn't until they reach full maturity that they can control their, base desires. The man was having trouble explaining the situation, but pushed forward regardless. These young women are effectively bonded to Sergeant Gregory and there is nothing we can do about it. As long as he stays within about 100 feet he seems okay. As he gets farther away he reports his head feels like someone is tearing his brain out and using it like a, how did he put it, He looked back at his communicator, a hacky sack. Everyone was quiet for a moment and then the Admiral let out a whistle. So they tried to warn Sergeant Gregory, and he now finds himself the victim of his own impatience. How about the VAT Orions? The tug has them tractored but reports it's going to take some time. They were far out when they caught them. Another day and they would have been lost entirely. He checked his communicator again and answered, "For hours, sir, give or take. We can't find any more life pods, so as soon as the other 4 tugs return with those satellites Neptune hit with concentrated jamming, we can send them to speed that up to 3 hours maybe. Thanks, XO. Keep us updated and have Sergeant Gregory moved closer to the Viril holding cells. We'll have Doc look into it when he gets some time, maybe he can figure something out," said Gregory, dismissing the man. "Did you see the pictures, Admiral?" Admiral Zhang nodded and let out a long sigh. "The Senate is going to see this as an act of aggression. Let them, we just sent the data burst via FTL drone with everything we learned." He thought at least the fleet wouldn't be caught unaware. The Trinaxians and Paula both have ignored the altercation. Both opting to refuse one ally in a position of weakness, placed there by another ally, they continue to trade with. He took another sip of his coffee and looked back at the communicator. The New York reports shields now at 23% and blink drive has been realigned. They are going to spool up the drive in a few minutes for a test run. An alarm klaxon wailed, warning. "Brace for impact," blared the XO over the ship's comms, and then the Phoenix bucked under an expanding pressure wave. He had barely had time to set the cup down. Captain Gregory stumbled out of his office onto the bridge to see people rushing everywhere. His XO standing at his station issuing orders. "What happened?" he asked. On the TAC screen, a wave was expanding through the far sea system like someone had thrown a large rock in an otherwise tranquil pond. And at its center was the Neptune, now burning as hard as it could away from the destroyed FTL Gate. Captain Therm's TAC officer detected an opening FTL signature, but it wasn't from the gate. He used the initiative to program both his racks of darts, fire a broadside at the gate, and send out a data burst. His XO stated. Just as that moon-sized ship was coming into the system right on top of them. On screen, Gregory said. The image that greeted him was like something out of an old B-rated horror movie of the early 21st century on Earth. The moon ship was missing a hemisphere and was still exiting the tear in the FTL lane. Electrical static whipped around the ship, dancing over its alien megastructure. The Neptune sped away, its engines spooling up for a blink even as the moon began to fire. Order the New York to get out of here, get our people back on the ship and get us moving now towards that tug towing the Orions. He looked on, still shaking his head. We've just been caught with our hand in the cookie jar and we need to run while we still have a handful of cookies. Thanks for listening. Please leave a like and hit the subscribe button if you enjoyed the story. If you feel generous and want to support the author's work, go visit the Patreon link in the description. Any support is welcome. Until next time.